to establish an Ibero-American forum or network of guarantees. And that is how Regar was born, an agreement between 24 financial institutions from 14 Ibero-American countries to promote SMEs in the region through information about the possibilities for financing and development to turn them into a source of exports and regional growth. Regar is leading in exchange of information, knowledge, and experiences and policies related to access to financing, as well as promoting innovation of products and programs of guarantees through research, Ibero-American fora, international internships, and consulting. Regar recognizes SMEs' importance as they are responsible for a high percentage of the average GDP of the region and a large amount of formal employment. That is why we must promote their growth. The support channeled through Ibero-American guarantees institutions already represent over $20 billion in live guarantees, over $35 billion in live credit, over 3.6 million companies with guarantees, over $13 billion in guarantees a year, over $29 billion a year in credits a year, and over 1.25 million companies supported each year. It promotes regional growth, promoting new products and models of guarantees to make American countries more competitive in a globalized world. Regar, 25 years of supporting guarantees institutions in Ibero-America. In the name of Regar, we welcome you to the 2021 Ibero-American Regar Encounter. Good morning in America, good afternoon in Europe. This year, this Ibero-American event is organized by the Institutions for Development in Mexico, the trusts introduced with regards to agriculture, FIRA, Nacional Financiera, and the National Bank for Foreign Trade. We thank them for contributing to the preparation of this event that without a doubt will be of great interest as we will be tackling relevant topics for the current context. Guarantees 2.0, exploring new opportunities, is focused on guarantees, innovative processes, products, and channels of distribution with a perspective of reality regarding financial systems in the region that will allow us to accompany the development in our region. I invite you to watch a short video prepared by our Mexican colleagues to welcome you to this wonderful and beautiful country, Mexico. We are the greatest coincidence, the greatest happenstance. Everything that you know, everything that you love, everything that you are can only exist in this place. This world that has led us to live through great experiences and moments represents a new challenge. Today, we need to see each other as organized brothers and sisters to overcome this problem. And when we achieve that, we will find ourselves again to welcome you once again in Mexico, where we will be able to enjoy our beaches and turquoise waters, go on adventurous trips in our jungles and mountains, surprise ourselves with our enigmatic pyramids, historical cities, and magical towns, but also celebrate life, of course accompanied by Mexican cuisine. We would like to thank our Mexican colleagues for welcoming our colleagues from Ibero-America to this forum. To begin today's activities, I invite you to listen to our Regar authorities. Beatriz Freitas, President of the Brazilian Promotion Bank and President of the Council of Regar, Pedro Sonero, from Iberabar, Spain, and President of Regar for Europe, and Ivan Ruiz, President of the Guarantees Fund in Colombia and Regar Latin America. Luz Estera Lozano, Secretary General of Regar. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the Ibero-American Regar event 2021. I would like to thank the Mexican institutions, Bancomex, NAFIN, and Sociedad Hipotecaria Federal for their wonderful organization of this event so that we can enjoy this forum in term regarding guarantees. Over 25 years ago, the first Ibero-American Forum was held in Regar, uninterruptedly and with great organization. Among this contingency, this pandemic that we have gone through in the last couple of years around the globe, Regar has maintained open channels of communication and has used different techniques to carry out many webinars. Through these webinars, we disseminated information about the initiatives implemented and with SMEs to open new paths to provide relief to the economic and health crisis. In 2021, we have the participation of over 400 participants from over 20 countries. Without a doubt, the value of this event is great. We wish to tackle our new realities for the benefit of SMEs. Hopefully, these two following days that will be intense with the participation of different international panelists and workshops in specialized topics will be fruitful. And for the first time, we will be granting the Regar Prize. With this prize, we celebrate the efforts made by all people who have been crucial in the development of systems of guarantees. We recognize the development and the impact that these institutions have had in terms of supporting companies in our region. We would also like to highlight the well-sustained initiatives that set SMEs at the core of our objectives. We are sure that during this event, we will find new mechanisms and options that will keep positioning the Ibero-American guarantee systems as leaders for SME financing. I would now like to give the floor to Pedro Pisonero. He represents our representation in Europe. Good afternoon from Spain. Thank you, Beatriz, our president. In just a few seconds, I would like to first and foremost convey a congratulatory message for all of your work during this last year and a half during the pandemic and the efforts made at the General Secretariat. I want to make this public, especially with if it's all right with my Mexican colleagues, Jorge Ivan Velasquez, I think that we will be eternally grateful. I would also like to send our greetings to all of you who are listening to us today. I believe that we are going through some difficult times. We have been able to overcome this situation little by little, as we have said. I think that this has united us even more. I think this is one of the most powerful values that we have, and I think that we can intensify our efforts. On top of everything, we are very satisfied in terms of the work done from the perspective of working committees as well as the internal work and on evolution and statistics that we have carried out. Finally, I would like to thank the efforts of our Mexican colleagues on this occasion for organizing this forum. I know this has been a lot of work. we find ourselves at a point of somewhat hybrid events, and hopefully by next year we will be able to meet once again in person. Either way, we feel confident about the future of our association and want to share our experiences with our internal partners. I am one of them, and I am frankly satisfied with all of the work done, as well as with all other institutions in order to protect guarantees. I don't want to take up any more time. Thank you everyone for listening, and I wish you the best of luck and strength for the following year. A very special greeting to Beatriz, Luz Estela, and Pedro, and for Jorge. As Pedro mentioned, he took on the burden of the interim general secretariat, and thank you for that wonderful work. I would like to send special greetings from Colombia and from our president, Raúl Buitrago. The truth is that our organizers have done great in organizing this 2021 forum, in spite of the fact that we are still holding our events virtually, as Pedro was mentioning. In a way, we are starting to see some events in person, and we have the best wishes of meeting once again in Central America or in any region of the world in which our next forum might be held. As I was saying, thank you to the Mexican organizers, FIRA, Banco Mext, and INAFIN. I think that the topics that we will be tackling today regarding the 2.0 Industrial Revolution is quite pertinent. Regarding the changes generated around the globe in the last few years and in the framework of the pandemic, I think that we must see this as an opportunity and not as a crisis. The pandemic will bring about new opportunities. Finally, I would like to wish you all a wonderful event. Hopefully, we will meet in person again, and this organization, this association, will keep leading us in these important topics. We must keep on supporting SMEs' developments and especially their access to financing, which is crucial for that development. Greetings and have a very successful 2 working days in this forum. Hello, everyone. I would like to, just like my colleagues, thank our Mexican colleagues from the Banking Association for the wonderful work organizing this forum. As it was mentioned beforehand, this is of the utmost relevance not only for all of our entities and partners at Regar, but also in terms of the companies that will benefit from this type of encounter based on current events, and that will help us prepare ourselves in new ways to assimilate how technology has an impact and how we will have to change our approaches and our strategies in our companies. I also consider that this topic comes hand in hand with the objectives of Regar, among which are knowledge and best practices and getting them to all of our partners. This has been part of the work that we have carried out in the last few years, and as we have mentioned beforehand, a lot of information and a lot of knowledge has been shared up until now, as well as success cases, sharing of experiences that in many of our countries have been fruitful and that could be replicated possibly in other regions. Regar has a long history of over 25 years, and we have not stopped, not even during the pandemic. We have kept on working remotely and we have adapted. So, the dynamic of this forum shows us how we are always trying to stay current and updated and move forward in terms of innovation and transmitting to our partners the best information and best practices. Looking towards the future, I also consider that Regar will keep on working to these ends. We will be developing projects that will seek to improve everything that we have delivered to our partners and members, and also, of course, for the benefit of small and medium enterprises. It is a fact that guarantees in each of our countries and entities that are part of Regar reflect the activities regarding financing towards SMEs in our countries. And as guarantees are developed, evolve, and grow, the impact is seen directly in that financing to SMEs. The truth is, I would just like to wrap up by welcoming you and thanking you all for being here. Pedro, Ivan, and Luz Estela, thank you so much for your kind words, for your remarks. We have an intense agenda for today. The fourth industrial revolution is characterized by a set of new technologies that work in our physical, biological, and digital worlds, impacting economies and disciplines around the globe. The phrase data is our 21st century oil is crucial as all of these elements integrate technologies not only operationally speaking but in all production processes. That way, the Internet of Things and new technologies, the cloud, big data, analytics, AI, data science, blockchain, among other technological advancements, have made the fourth industrial revolution to direct itself towards optimization of processes and resources through data compilation, specifically in the financial sector. In this framework, we would like to begin our first panel, Perspectives of Financial Systems and Institutions of Development Facing the Fourth Industrial Revolution 4.0. We would like to welcome our panelists and we would like to thank you beforehand for participating. We know that this will be a relevant panel in this agenda of our 2021 Regar encounter. Jesus Alan Elizondo, Director General of FIRA, Juan Pablo de Botten, Banco Mext and NAFIN, Jorge Mendoza, Director General from Sociedad Hipotecaria Federal and Banobras, and our moderator, Daniel Becker Feldman, President of the Mexican Banking Association, to whom I will give the floor. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Can you confirm that you can hear me, please? First and foremost, thank you for inviting to moderate this important panel of the Regar event, and of course, being here with three important people from our sector, besides their important trajectory. I have the pleasure of knowing them all. The intent is to talk a little bit about this new revolution towards the future and how it can have an impact in the financial sector in terms of new methodologies and tools. As you all know, the fourth industrial revolution is not is defined by a set of new technologies, but also by a new system built on industrial revolution basis. We must consider the approach, the impact, and the scope of new advancements in our history, which are disrupting and interfering in all industries. If you allow me, besides greeting you all and knowing that this will be a very interesting forum, I would like to begin in alphabetical order and hear from Juan Pablo de Boton in terms of Juan Pablo, what's your perception in terms of what this industrial revolution means? Good morning, Juan Pablo. It's a pleasure to see you once again. From your perspective, what does the 4.0 revolution mean? From my perspective, it entails a new way of considering possibilities, technology, digital transactionality is very important all the way. I think that we need to acknowledge that many things are going to be different from how they were before based on the democratization that has gone on in terms of technologies. Before, many SMEs required very large amounts of capital to invest in computers, in large computers, and nowadays they can have access to the cloud and important tools. And that involves democratization and a possibility for innovation that is of the utmost importance in terms of information analysis and the kind of transactions that can be carried out in the digital world. Thank you. Alan, following up with our alphabetical order, thank you for being here. Good morning. From your perspective, what is the fourth industrial revolution? Good morning. I would like to take advantage of this time to thank my colleagues for organizing this event. It's a pleasure to greet you all. From our perspective, the 4.0 revolution is this unique situation in which we see the convergence of diverse technologies, AI, great storage capacities for data, all things related to robotics and storage with batteries that are much more potent. So all of this convergence is happening at the same time and it's multiplying exponentially the capacities that we have had throughout history. How does this 4.0 revolution for translate into the agricultural world? There has been a delay, a lag in terms of growth and productivity in rural areas, and this is translating into demographic issues and consumption issues for the population. This 4.0 revolution could be the comeback of humanity to higher productivity rates, and this is also translated in more and better opportunities to provide financial services, especially to those people who lack them. For us, this is the challenge and the opportunity of this 4.0 revolution, as you call it. Thank you. Jorge, good morning. We were talking yesterday about some digital platforms that have evolved and gotten us closer and be in touch with different people from different latitudes. From a banking perspective of development of infrastructure and housing, what does the 4.0 revolution mean? I think that myself and Juan Pablo, who is here today, we are both part of development banking in Mexico. And I think that there are several opportunities in terms of helping economic growth. As you know, we are an important tool for the federal government to promote priority projects. We are also known as a tool that promotes economic development. And all of this obviously helps the development of our country. But something that many times is not goes unmentioned in terms of development banking are two elements that are very important. First, financial inclusion. We are participating more and more with more people, more companies that had no access to credits. And also, we promote the development of financial markets that at the end of the day helps our country to promote credits and have more people and companies gain access to them. I believe that we have several projects pending, and Banobras and Nafin is involved here as well. We have a very important project called Internet para Todos, Internet for All, which entails providing internet to all people around the country. So, providing infrastructure so that everyone can have access to data, information, and platforms through their mobile phone or computer. And I think that will be possible very soon. We are doing this through Altan, a company that was awarded concession from the federal government. We have achieved a 70% coverage of our national territory, and the national administration's objective is to get to 90. I think that this is an important target, and it's an important example as to how we're working. We are also working with some prop techs and fintechs that I believe could detonate progress in terms of what Mexico is doing in this fourth industrial revolution. I believe that development banking, even though it doesn't always take the necessary risks to detonate projects, usually we go to projects or companies that have already been proven. I think that we have a very important area of opportunity looking towards the future. Thank you so much. Juan Pablo, from the perspective of this fourth revolution and these new tools, I believe that we have agreed and coincided in some other panels on this. I would like to ask, this industrial revolution, from your perspective, will it bring about as a consequence greater financial inclusion and financial well being for Mexicans, and why? Thank you, Daniel. It would be a tragedy if it didn't, I believe. I think that what this fourth industrial revolution or this management of data that allow us to access affordable infrastructure has to improve the well-being of people in general. I think it would be a terrible tragedy if we don't take advantage of the situation to democratize financial services. And I think Jorge started with a very important point. For these fintech platforms to exist, we require a high speed network at affordable costs for most of our population so that we can include all of that population that nowadays, at least, is not near a bank or a robust offer of financial services. And I think that this is without a doubt a great opportunity. Many people ask themselves if what is going to happen with technology in the future will bring about some sort of dystopian future, replacing jobs or people with machines. There's a lot of social tension, or maybe a topical future because everything is going to be greater because technology is going to achieve things on its own. And I think it's each of our responsibilities in our institutions to decide what we do with that technology. And I think that financial inclusion comes hand in hand with this digitization process. Alan, for an important sector as the agricultural and food sector in Mexico, which on top of everything has generated a lot for our country, this revolution that Juan Pablo was mentioning, from your perspective, will it bring about further inclusion? And if it does, please let us know based on which tools and how will we be able to assess and measure and determine if that and help Mexicans realize that this will bring about benefits for them. Of course, I think that to answer this question, I think that you need to go into the components of financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is defined by the ease of access, use, financial education, and protection of consumers. And I think that these four dimensions, these four elements can be overcome with the use of technology. Regarding access, one of the most important barriers that we observed in the agricultural sectors had to do with the costs it represented to generate a credit in marginalized or faraway communities. Having to visit the parcel or the project and then assessing its progress. Definitely, there are costs pertaining to information as well. It's very difficult to know the history of those small producers, the risks that they are facing. So, technology brings about very interesting elements. For example, the use of satellite information through which you can, from your desktop in your office, in your financial institution, verify the use of those credits, if the hectares they established at the beginning have been sowed, how they plan their crops in terms of the vigor of their plants, and also the history of meteorological and natural events that have affected those parcels. These are very valuable information elements that will allow us to lower these barriers and detonate credits. I think that this resolves in a good way the access issue, or at least it makes it more affordable.
We also have, in terms of the use, given the arrival of financial services that could be given through technological tools in the small communities with a payment infrastructure that will provide financial amounts that are specialized. This is possible thanks to the connectivity element, and I believe that the fact of connecting more communities to internet will provide services in the afar communities. In what has to do with the consumers protection, this is quite an important step that we have taken, for example, to give more transparency and comparability to financial services through platforms that could compare and contract insurances, guarantees, and other elements that are not very difficult to organize. The issue is to generate the information so we can actually go into the fomenting banking system or fostering banking system. Now, I believe that the developmental banking is quite close, given the new system, to provide more access, use, and more financial education or literacy. Jorge, you have a scope of broad responsibilities from the infrastructural project, which are critical in the hydroelectric plants, highways, up to the possibilities of funding real estate projects. How do you see this technology as you incorporate it to your responsibilities and would have an effect in the people of Mexico, and how the people of Mexico that have the possibility of becoming a credit umbrella of what are the credits that you're granting could have access to this new industrial revolution 4.0 in this would have an impact in their lifestyles. Well, we have the possibility of participating within the economy and the credit section. As you have mentioned, I work at Banormas and also at the financial mortgage federal system. Well, we are involved with the energy sector. We're one of the most important funders of green energy, of wind energy, and voltaic and energy. And this will help us to have more efficient technologies that will help us to reduce costs. More so, the services that are taking place, given this fourth revolution, we are we have the possibility of participating within the highway fund with 52 highway areas. Banobras, we are the main banking for highways. We have an important deployment of resources for the connectivity infrastructure in the new Felipe Angeles airport that will allow Mexico City to turn into a logistic, more relevant hub. We're working in the tourist area and the south-southeast area with the Mayan train and some other highways. We're also a part of the projects in the state of Nayarit to try to bring Guadalajara and the state of Jalisco to the coastal area and also to the capital city. And also the Puerto Vallarta airport is under refurbishing process. So we can contribute through Altar. And what I mean to say is all of these basic structure, even though we don't think that these are technological steps forward, we can see in automatization companies or service companies where we are sharing assets among people. Well, I believe it is important to understand that all of this basic infrastructure is important so the new businesses can develop within their operations. It's important to have good connectivity within the country and beyond the country. This is connectivity abroad, and I think that this could be somehow the future of our country. Within the Federal Mortgage Society, well, we can be more directed in our participation within the technological advances. Something that we realized as SHF is that in the housing area in Mexico, we still depend on the major intermediaries, the major banks, and we're not leveling the technology in order to reach to people that today have no access to credit. So therefore, at SHF, we have set a plan in order to depend of the second tier banking system, not financial intermediaries. So we have a plan of how to depend less of the major banks and how to work with new technologies and new intermediaries in the market. We have mapped over 400 entities that are participating in Mexico, some of them in the payment services, others in granting loans, some phones that are turning into fintechs in order to provide faster credits, more agile to our clients. And what we are offering now at SHF is we expect to launch in November or December of this year is a digital mortgage through a fintech that will be with an intermediary. This is something that some of the major banks do have in place, but we believe that nowadays we will reach more participants in order to comply with what Alan was mentioning. We believe that there's no good access to the mortgage system. People do not have a quick access to compare prices, interest payments, funding systems, and also to be able to compare what different institutions provide. I think that this will reduce timing. People will have access to credits quite quickly and know if you are liable to receive a credit. There will be great transparency of what others are offering. This is talking about what major banks are offering and the small banks are offering. And by doing this, we will be able to bring credits related to housing to those people that nowadays do not have it or that are leaving the major banks giving any particular reason. This is a good example that I'm sure could become an important trigger. Now, I'm involved with the housing, but if we extrapolate what we are talking about, the different sectors, we can have quite a quick evolution. There are many new companies within this sector. There are many young people participating. What they're looking for is access to funding for the development of their ideas. At Sofamec, sometimes we're somehow bureaucratic. We don't embrace risk sometimes. We don't wish that to have any failures. But I think we have to start thinking about how to participate in this first stage of the companies, of developers, of the intermediaries, in order to be a catalyzer of new ideas. I thank you so much, Jorge. Alan, we have talked and I think we have heard, and I'm sure all of you, I've had the pleasure of knowing you personally. And now I want to take all of your knowledge and pick your brain so everyone that is listening to us could take along good ideas. So, Alan, I have a provoking question for the three of you. I think that we all aspire to have a more equitable Mexico, a fairer Mexico. How should we be concerned and involved so this industrial revolution will no longer generate gaps of knowledge? Because obviously we have seen how the ICTES they have this is said in the States, the winner takes all. How can we, from your own logic, this industrial revolution, as Juan Pablo was saying, will democratize and really will enable us to have a more a fairer society? It's a very good question, let me say, and I think you're calling to the essence of the fomenting banking system. What we have seen in the farmland is the use of this technology has been used in the U.S., in Brazil, in Europe. These are countries that are big in terms of agricultural extensions, but so they're major companies that have had access through their own means to this technology. Also, not on the side of the demand, but also in the demand of the supply. I mean, they are using this follow-up digital and big data technologies of the farmland. These are companies that are placed in these countries because they have the element that provides them the possibility of becoming a company that can pay for their services. Now, in countries such as Mexico, we don't have these same agricultural extensions. But of course, this does not mean that are doing things from scratch. But I mean, we have the presence of the supply and demand, regardless of the size of the company in the agricultural sector. The big question here is how we can make the small producers, more so in the southeastern region, will have access to credit. Now, here you're talking about scale economies. I think that from the point of view of a second tier institution, as it is the case of ours, FIRA, well, this is the role that we have played for many years. I mean, FIRA operates in financial units. Now, this is easier for us to have access to these technologies and to become a client of these companies that provide these technologies and to provide an integrated perspective of all of the Mexican farmland. We have a presence in two-thirds of what is funded in Mexico. So we do have a volume. It is easier to do so through an institution like ours with this scale than the 106 individual institutions. This has a first barrier with the 106 institutions through a scale economy that we can provide. But what is more relevant here is what we can do. So the southeast region would have access to this. If we can connect, let's say, how to pay for your services and to have a vision of the whole country in this area, well, for us it could be simpler to place this tool of meteorology and satellite supervision to the big producers, but more so to the small producers, and to adapt these type of services within our systems, so we can have a follow-up of their planting areas or the lots as farm workers in areas such as the south of Mexico or Sinaloa. In the future, I can share with you that these technologies are already here. And well, of course, the small producers were the first in the list. Now, you were sharing with us, it's up to us the use that we wish to give to this area. Now, from Bancomex, you have an area in charge of everything that has to do with all of those companies that are connected to foreign trade. And then, on the other hand, you have an issue of the Nafinsa infrastructure. But there is a great dedication to a small and medium-sized company. What can we expect when we're talking about these tools? Not to leave behind those communities like the ones that Alan has mentioned that are afar of the small population and villages. Can you help us with solving this problem? What is the solution for this? Well, you know in advance that the answer is yes. I would say that an important key for this, as you have stated rightfully, is to consider people and place them at the center. I think we're fortunate here because we have leaderships in Mexico and in several countries that are interested in these areas that we're promoting towards this to take place this way. I would say to you that at the end of the story, the fact of disseminating the knowledge that we have in regards to this area, not only the infrastructure, or having access in an easier way to the banking sector through a credit card that has followers, for example, in Amazon in 20 minutes. So then I believe that these networks, such as Regar, could share knowledge internationally, and this is where we have similar problems among the different countries and the developmental banking systems in the different sectors. This will lead us to create a digital ecosystem, and it has to do with what Jorge was mentioning, how we can have the presence of other intermediaries and access them and strengthen our relationship with the banking system, so among all of us we can approach this problem. I think it is a problem that can be solved not by developing only individually but through innovation. And I think it will be very important what we can do, not only by each and every one of us, but as a whole, and how this will be reflected into empowering the end user that will allow us with standards and with digital literacy to to have this transaction and do it in an efficient way and with a greater and better supply for users. Now, here I think that we will have a digital society, and what we wish to do is to innovate in products, to have a presence in the digital transformation of the bank, and also to work together with other institutions in order to bring financial services to more people. I will say to you that what we can expect from Nacional Financiera and Bancomex, we're interested in having a relevant role in our digital ecosystem in Mexico and also in regards to international trade, where we have a close relationship with other countries. And I believe that this is here where we have important possibilities in regards to having safe, sufficient transactions that will allow us to face the value chain challenges that we're currently having. I think that initiatives and fora like this one of Regar will help us to achieve our goals. Well, I thank you so much. There's some topics that I can see that you're already referring to different areas, such as Jorge, you make infrastructure, you grant mortgages. How can we use technology not to leave any more Mexicans behind and create conditions in order to have a fairer Mexico? I think that technology will be basic, the use of technology, better said, for the future and economic growth in our country to be inclusive in general terms. I believe that the use of technology by itself is not enough in order to achieve these goals. I believe that technology must be accompanied by several elements, and I'm referring to the following. We are looking at this Industrial Revolution 4.0 growing and making use of digitization, technological, and connectivity among people and businesses. And what we have not found is the possibility of growing without destroying the environment, and the possibility of growing without allowing the growth of economic and social gaps and preventing their growth. So, within the developmental banking system and our participation within the economic system and decision makers, this use of technology is to be used not only to make money, but also to bring new technologies on board that could benefit our population. I'm referring to the fact that these have to be technologies that will go hand in hand with improving the environment, with social policies in place, gender policies in place that will improve the labor to be more productive as a sector, and to use this technology for the inclusion of social elements, but also financial areas that I believe we will have a quick advancement in the following years in this area in the country. Technology can be used for education, to share information, equality of opportunities, and I believe that if we use this infrastructure that is created behind all of this revolution and the technological steps to support people, also to move forward in the economic growth agenda, and it will go hand in hand with closing the social and gender gaps and to improve the environment. I think we will be in a very favorable situation. I thank you so much, Jorge, and this gives a line to go back to Juan Pablo. Juan Pablo, is are there some opinions that I see are critical in terms that the models for Mexico used in this fourth revolution, and I consider what Jorge just mentioned, and I anticipate to the question that I had prepared for you. There are some elements that say that these algorithms based on artificial intelligence and machine learning could generate bias to minority groups, to the Afar communities. I am not doubting that this is the case, but we're seeing in the most developed countries that even they're starting to have intentions of carrying out legal actions against algorithms. How can we do that these algorithms from your construction would not create bias in terms of their decisions? Well, I believe that it's quite difficult that you will manage that the algorithm will not generate bias if you're feeding it with historic information that comes from these same bias. I believe that what is important is to understand how algorithms operate and to have an ethical criteria after the interpretation of the algorithm and a conscious decision in regards to not only the economic criteria or the historic criteria taken into account by the algorithm, but the environmental and social criteria that will make that your decisions to be taken will be sustainable and will have a good balance among the parties, including ethics. I believe that technology is becoming something so important in our daily activities, not only in the developmental banking and the small and medium sized companies, but also people in general, that we cannot delegate in an algorithm the way of thinking, which are the consequences of what takes place, and the fact of taking into account this for issues such as decision making in an automatized way as a result of the artificial intelligence implementation, but even our behavior in the digital world and what this means in terms of security. We cannot delegate technological knowledge. That is basic, not even in this big tech time. We have to have a good knowledge of the concepts for decision making that are rational and to allow that these tools will act as such, but we don't want an absolute automatization because if not, it's going to be this fantasy movie where all of these buckets of water start flooding everything. No, we have to have. I think that the fact of having good tools is something that will have quite a presence here. I thank you so much, Pablo. Now, Alan, not to generate bias, and Juan Pablo and Jorge were mentioning this, we also have in Mexico an opportunity of closing the gap, not only economic, but a gender gap. What can we expect of the algorithms? Is this a concern, or what can we do in your knowledge, in your area of influence, so these algorithms will not generate gaps in gender or in the economic sector? Well, I think the focus that Juan Pablo has given to this is quite interesting. Algorithms are made, and the question is quite positive because they're made precisely to detect these bias in which, typically speaking, we will be affecting a small SME or a producer who is afar. Historically, they have been the ones that have had a greater presence of problems or access to opportunities, and this put them behind. And if the algorithms are well made, they have to find these bias. What you're doing is you're making a call to two main tools that are different to the algorithms, and you're referring to the institutions that can provide them. The first are the guarantee products. The guarantee product is precisely what they want to do is to find these bias, this information asymmetries, and those lacks within the market in order to have an enhancement. These enhancement comes to facilitate the financial persons that are getting the credit where this bias is. It would allow us to have a better design. To be precise, this is an algorithm that is organized this way. I think that if you carry this challenge that you're expressing to a different scenario, which is the topic that we're talking about here, in regards to guarantees. I think that the second topic, which is very important to trigger from the fomenting banking, is this large amount of information generated. We could be possible to provide it to the generator of this. That means a small SME or an accredited small producer within the institutions and the social networks, but they have not received in exchange the benefit of all of this information they're getting. Now, open banking, when this will start in Mexico, there will be, we will generate a financial data transactions history that is generated by this small SME. We have to achieve from the fomenting banking that this banking data will be regenerating, and it will be good for this person to enjoy the benefit, the treatment, and the storing of this information, and to use it as a powerful tool so they can have access to better financial services. It is an important challenge. It talks about data governance, processing of the data. It's talking about how to make them available for them to use it. The fomenting banking system has the connectivity with the financial institutions, and we aspire to have all of these data in an orderly way to return it to the users. So if there will be these biases, and I think that we are providing tools to that small producer, the SME, to use all of these elements in their favor. Well, I would like to hear all of you because ourselves from the Banking Mexican Association, we have reviewed with this within the association in every bank. If this world feels that the revolution will be becoming a bridge that will not use the formal channels of the banking system. As developmental banking, Jorge, do you see a risk that as a result of the use of technology, your presence in the national life could lose relevance as a result of the use of these tools? Okay, let me see. There are always risks within the market and within the use of new technologies that can have to do with labor issues, displacement of companies, changes within the industry. And I think that we're going to be participating with new agents, and these new agents, we want that within supervision and regulation to have them as long as this will not go against the development process and innovation. I believe that all of these technologies, in general terms, what they will be doing is for us to have more information, that we will democratize the use of banking systems, and I think that this is well managed and well supervised. It will be positive. We do not see any dysfunction in Mexico, no a materialized risk, but I believe that if we level our goals way forward with this inclusive growth, ensuring that the new technologies will not have distortions or will leave people out of certain services and certain opportunities, I believe that it will be very positive in the future. We are considering what my colleagues were saying, and your question regarding algorithms. I think algorithms are good. They will help us for decision making, but at the end of the story, they're just a series of instructions that lead you to take decisions, to analyze and implement the different actions. But what we have seen within the different industries and sectors and all of the people that think about this is there is still an important rationality in the decision making processes with humans, and this human factor will still be needed, and we will need that the human factor and people behind the technology and decision makers in the different areas, being the private sector, the government, or regulators. Well, we all will be aligned to ensure that technology will bring positive things and will not become a risk or a disruption that could have an impact within the industry. I thank you, Jorge. Uh, Alan, do you believe there are any risks that you are, for example, a Bank of Mexico, a part of Bank of Mexico? There is a discussion is through the crypt coin, or that in some countries is a legal currency. If this will be done through the commercial bank, do you see any risks for FIRA with this technology that may lose presence in the capacity of making public policy for the farmland? If you are referring to crypt coins, well, this is not something that is in our scope. We have seen the use of this technology to give traceability to many products, and this has represented a benefit because the end user asks for a traceability of products within the line of a better environmental treatment. And well, they have been an effective mechanism of means of payment. Well, we have more benefits, not in cost. Truly, there is a certain level of speculation in regards to crypto coins. This has been more present recently, but it's still beyond the scope that we are considering.
Oh, Juan Pablo and Jorge, just to conclude, you were saying that developing banking by its nature is very conservative in terms of granting credits. That is based on the growth the economic growth and well-being. These algorithms, will they allow us to, I wouldn't say take more risks that put banking at risk, but will they make us more assertive and have a better deepening index in terms of development, Juan Pablo? Yes, I understand what Jorge is mentioning, and he is completely right in the sense that we are taking care of the patrimony, the property, the goods of the people. So we must be aware of the risks that we're taking. Now, I think that not budging our stance is also a risk because the world is moving constantly, and we need to take advantage of new technologies, not only to not lag behind, but also to move our society forward. So these tools will help us mitigate that risk of remaining where we are, something that was different a few generations ago. Juan Pablo, Alan, and Jorge, I think that we can all perceive your analysis capabilities. I think that because of time, we cannot go deeper into cryptocurrencies and blockchains and different other different things. But I think that we are very grateful for this time that you have given us. Thank you for inviting us. I would like to give the floor to Jorge Velázquez. Again, thank you all for your wonderful presentations and answers. We would like to thank our panelists, Jesus Alan Elizondo, Juan Pablo de Boton, Jorge Mendoza, and our moderator, Daniel Becker, for their remarks. I leave today with many things said. The objective per se of the 4.0 revolution must be that for that the population should receive the benefits of digitization, among them access to high-speed internet at a low cost, at affordable costs, well-being for the population with social responsibility, caring for the environment, gender equality, and training for better opportunities. And the use of algorithms must be used ethically, it must be ethical in order to provide better access. Having better tools does not mean that we must not think about the consequences. Thank you for your participation. Now we will have our first keynote speech. We will would like to let you know that this will be held in English with simultaneous translation into Spanish. If you wish to listen to the conference in English, you can select auditorium. There, you can select the language that you might require, English, Spanish, or Portuguese. You will also find several options in the menu, and there is technical support if you should need it. Our conference will be 45 minutes long, and at the end we will have a short Q&A session. For that, we invite you to use the corresponding chat so that you can pose your questions and make your comments to our keynote speaker. Without further ado, we would like to welcome Gerd Leonhard. He is a futurist that is broadly known and recognized with an experience of over 1,500 keynote speeches in over 50 countries and a combined audience of over 1 million people. First and foremost, he focuses on... The interpreter apologizes. We have lost audio.
NASA to the moon. So, I mean, it's exponential change, mind-boggling change, like, for example, what's happening in money, digital credit cards, the rethinking of the digital money ecosystem, and how banks borrow, and whether we're going to have a global digital currency. That's a huge debate that's happening everywhere, also in Mexico and many other countries where digital currencies are already being debated. And of course, we have microfunding, microloan organizations that are helping to do this. We're moving into the future where a lot of that is going to happen online, and where reality, basically our physical world, is merging with the digital world. And that's hard to say in many countries where there isn't much infrastructure on this yet. But the next 10 years will fix all of that. We'll have roughly 9 billion people on the internet in 2030. And if we're looking at the technology facts here, what's happening around us, we are the biggest technological transformation point in human history. Not the internet anymore, but AI, robotics, genome sequencing, the blockchain technology. And we have 5 multi-trillion-dollar innovation platforms at the blockchain, energy storage, robotics, genome sequencing, and of course artificial intelligence. And we have all of these issues coming together and creating huge opportunities. For example, here, as the price for technology is going down and down, total cost reduction trend in data storage, LEDs, batteries, not going towards zero, but pretty close to zero, in a really fast change progress, for example, and solar panels and lithium-ion battery prices and 3D printing and so on. And there's a wave of change coming through us now. And many of them are tough challenges, one after the other, but they're also amazing opportunities. You know, COVID, of course, is primarily a challenge right now. But climate change, yeah, this is a return to nature positive investing that's egged on by the sort of new economic logic that's unfolding. And we're basically looking at climate change as being the biggest business opportunity to turn everything green that we've ever seen in the last 50 years. We're leaving the industrial economy, the fossil fuel economy, towards the information economy, the creative economy, the natural economy, if you wish. That's all happening in the next 10 years. Huge challenges for systems, but also very, very positive, looking at the long-term gain of what we can actually do better then. So we're in the moment of pivoting. And basically all the businesses, countries, organizations are turning around to deal with the larger issues that have been uncovered since COVID and even before: climate change, the financial markets, the system of capitalism, inequality, and so on, especially in South America, of course. Huge topics here that are emerging as the number one topics now. And we're moving into a future where pivoting is normal, like we've seen, for example, in America, 10 years of the golden age and then considerable chaos. America is pivoting wildly right now. That's going to make a vast difference also for South America and for pretty much every country around the world. It will be kind of a strange golden age. Strange in the sense of everything is looking up after the COVID rebound, but the chaos will be large. And you really have to understand how to see through the chaos, how to understand what's happening and make up your mind and make your bets, use your intuition. The future isn't going to be some logical system. It can't be predicted conclusively like this. It is basically something that we can get a feeling about and a certain understanding and make our best bets. And it's really always been like this. So when we look at the future now, the sort of COVID rebound that's happening around us, there's basically 3 different points that are going to dominate the economy, and they will dominate also your business of funding and loan guarantees, and of course all of your customers in the agricultural business and other businesses. First, dramatic digitization. Technology absolutely everywhere. Digital transformation, topic number 1. Everybody is transforming now. In 10 years, there won't be any company left that's not digitally transformed, including banking, insurance, agriculture, food, right? And decarbonization, that is, of course, the most urgent one, and that is being kicked off right now. COVID-19 was essentially a trial run for climate change. Right? What we have seen here is that we have to make compromises. We have to change what we do because it's existential. And don't make any mistakes about this. Climate change is becoming even more existential now. We're going to take dramatic action. I'll talk about that shortly. But it is also an opportunity to redo the entire operating system of the world towards sustainable energy. And lastly, reformation. which is really the rewriting of the economic logic. The idea of sort of extreme capitalism, basically profit growth at all costs, that is no longer working. And we saw that with COVID, that we have to make changes to the way that we look at the world. And now, because of the COVID crisis, many millennials and Gen Y people, between 25 and 35, are now asking larger questions. What is it all about? What's the purpose of the company? What's the purpose of progress? How can we live together in a world that has collective benefit? And what good does it do is to make more money when the planet is going bankrupt? So all these things are coming together, creating a huge momentum in the next 10 years towards a positive future, a good future, but also really, catching us unaware and forcing us to rethink how we do things and how exactly we're going to go forward. Essentially, most of business will be rewritten. The shipping business, the agricultural business, the food business, the healthcare business, as technology and biology are converging. Right? So basically what we have here is a total shake-up of everything that we know about, new paradigms, new narratives, new opportunities. And it's a total reset in so many ways, as the World Economic Forum calls it. I call it the Great Transformation. Basically, all of the things that used to be business as usual, that's no longer. Business as usual is dead or dying. We're rethinking how we're doing things pretty much across the board. And that's going to be along those paradigms that we've talked for quite some time. People, Planet, Profit, Elkington, and others. You heard about this for a long time, but now it's finally getting real. People, Planet, Purpose, and Prosperity. That's emerging as the new operating paradigm. And this is sort of a neo-capitalism or post-capitalism, sustainable capitalism. It's a way that we look at the future. And it's also not new, but it's finally coming to fruition because COVID has been accelerating this, and it will continue to do so until we have more of the rebound from COVID, probably in your part of the world, in the southern part of the world, at least 12 to 18 months. And we see this happening all over the world, just looking at the headlines here. Of course, the Pandora Papers and the Business Roundtable conversations and the government discussions about the vaccine waivers, and all that stuff is like breaking the mold with what used to be normal. We're not going back to normal. We're not going to think normal. We're expecting different things. We want to build back better, right? Normal, yes, we're going to go back to restaurants. We'll fly again in some way. But the way that we think about the world is changing. And that's going to have huge political consequences, huge economic consequences. And it's a great reboot opportunity to seize the day in different ways. So let's talk about the impact of technology. By far, of course, the biggest factor, along with decarbonization and the green deals that are popping up left and right in your business and what you're funding in banking, financial services. First, exponential change has to be understood as leaping. We are no longer in a world where we are going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on. And yes, 1, 2, 4 is almost the same than 1, 2, 3. But after that, and we're at point 4, we are leaping, right? We are going exponentially. Moore's law, Metcalfe's law, Wright's law, basically the power of computing. And humans, of course, aren't exponential, but everything around us is becoming exponential. 26 steps exponentially. 30 exponential steps. I get 26 times around the world, not just out the door. And if you have kids, you got to think about that. 10 years from now, 256. That's almost 100 times what we have today. And mind-boggling speed of change. And there's 3 paradigms happening here. Exponential change, convergent industries, for example, agriculture and technology are converging, banking and technology is converging, right? And combinatorial offerings, new ideas based on the power of technology that weren't possible before. Think Uber and Dropbox and Zero and all of these services that are based in the cloud. None of that would have been possible. And now banking is moving to the cloud. Banking is becoming digital. Money is becoming digital. I think that's going to be a great upheaval, a great opportunity to do entirely new things. And many of these things are driven in developing countries. They're kind of invented in Silicon Valley and in China, but then very quickly, for example, mobile money is the main way of paying in Africa, not in Europe. And so developing countries are really going to be at the driver's seat of that exponential change as we're going to a future of those 3 different things. I'll give you some bullets. First, exponential progress has to be understood as gradually, then suddenly. That means we don't see much at all, and all of a sudden it's exploding. Like, think about digital music. We had to download from Napster and stream illegally from YouTube and so on and rip the stream. And all of a sudden, boom, here we are, and 150 million people are subscribing to music in the cloud, whether it's Deezer or Spotify or Apple or any of the others. So that's basically nothing at first, and then just explosion, like the paperless office, like digital personalized medicine and digital food and so on. So these convergent industries are the most powerful drivers as they go forward and create entirely new values. So banking and technology is converging, and disruptive combinatorial models that are put together by technology, things that weren't possible before, like, for example, digital credit cards, and of course the blockchain and even Bitcoin as a momentum driver of this whole debate. I don't think Bitcoin will be a major financing operator in the future in terms of that becoming a bona fide currency, but I'll talk about blockchain a little bit later. The blockchain protocol itself is here to stay, and it's driving that combinatorial change. So as we look at that future, we have to understand that the framework is changing of the business, as Alvin Toffler, my favorite futurist, said about 4 decades ago. It's not just the picture. Here's your picture, right? Loan guarantees, financial services, agriculture. That's the picture, but here is the framework. Right? Data, intelligent machines, the Internet of Things, quantum computing, artificial intelligence and language processing, and the blockchain, 3D printing, virtual reality, genetic engineering. All of these things are changing everything around us. So it's a context that changes. And we have to understand this is not just one change, like using a mobile phone, or like being able to change the genetic engineering of either plants or even humans. Right? It's not just one thing. It's them all coming together at the same time, creating multiple side effects and sort of a chain flow of possibilities. As you can see in this video, now all of the stuff that we're already seeing around us, whether it's robotics or virtual reality or plant-based food or vertical farming, or I'll talk more about that in a second, that's already happening here. So 5 key points that you should remember. Data is the new oil. I've said that for a long time, but it's very true now. Data is worth more than oil. And now you can safely say that data is also kind of a weapon, like social media using data as a weapon. So we have to be very careful about what we do with data and how we can keep data safe and value our customers by showing respect for their data. Artificial intelligence is the new electricity, is the juice that flows to the network that makes it work. And it's important to realize we're not talking about intelligence like humans. Yeah? We're talking about smartness. I prefer to call it artificial smartness or intelligent assistance, but that is the thing that connects the data as it goes into the cloud, and the cloud is becoming the new office for many of us working from home, and it's becoming the new living room, and it's becoming the new lab, for example, with cloud biology, where people are, pharma companies are investigating medical applications and inventing new things using AI and the cloud, cloud biology. And the Internet of Things connected everything, essentially, whether it's environmental monitoring or crop harvesting or machines. That's kind of the new browser, right? So that's like Netscape at the very beginning of the Internet. Now we have the Internet of Things where we can search and we can find data. There's an estimate saying roughly 1 trillion connected devices in 2030. Think about that for a second. And of course, that also opens up cybersecurity issues and so on. But what's happening here is when it all comes together, creates entirely new different possibilities. And then here's a daring one. Sustainable becomes the new profitable, because digital becomes the new green. So basically what's happening is here with all technology, we can make everything sustainable. And then that means basically that the definition of being successful is no longer just about profit at the expense of sustainability or pretending to be sustainable. It is going beyond that and essentially dishing us up with a new opportunity of creating an entirely new economic logic, sustainable and profitable, not degrowth, but sustainable growth. And I think if we're seeing what's happening, we already know that around us, everything is converted into smart, whether it's smart farming, big deal for you, of course, and smart banking, smart transportation, smart retail, maybe even smart government, right? And smart coordination of this. I mean, basically everything is becoming super smart, not intelligent like us, just smart, no longer dumb. Computers are no longer stupid. And we have to understand what that means. That doesn't mean they're like us. We can be stupid as well, but in different ways. But computers can't think or feel, but they can put large patterns together, and they can definitely beat us there. So by 2030, the connected and cloud and always on way that the internet is proceeding will really completely change our life. And the important part is that we have to remember that smart does not make human. Human is a bit more than smart, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but I don't think we have to fear this. We have to guard it. We have to make sure that everything should be connected as much as necessary, but not more. We don't want to live in a surveillance state because that seems more plausible and more doable and more efficient now. Also, a very important discussion about digital ethics, which I'll get into a little bit later. So I have a major theme I've developed on this in my last book called The Mega Shifts. And this is chapter 3 from my book, Technology versus Humanity. You can download it for free at megashifts.digital in Spanish, Portuguese, and 12 other languages. And basically what it is this moving landscape of all the results of the game changes, right? So whether it's about cognification or virtualization like digital twins, and personalization and mobilization and robotization, we used to laugh and call them the Asians because they all end with Asian. But if you read this PDF, you'll understand the context of this. Very important for investing in the right technologies and the right businesses and entrepreneurs and small, medium-sized companies is to understand where all that stuff is going, because again, it's happening all at the same time. And what's really important is the handshake between humans and machines. Yeah? So where does the money empower people, or where does it remove power? In the end, it's all about human flourishing. And human flourishing isn't just about money and growth, but they, of course, are very intricately connected. And moving people out of poverty. I mean, this is one of the main objectives that great technology can do when the policy is right. So the mega shifts are one of those crucial things that we have to consider what it does and what it doesn't, and how we're going to get to the goal that we want, which is a just and equitable and flourishing society, no matter what country you live in. By 2030, here's a couple of bullets, okay? We're going to see digital money and central bank digital currencies everywhere. We'll probably see the dollar replaced as a global currency with a digital dollar, parenthesis. But it will not be Bitcoin. It will still be centralized and supervised by banks because, governments want to keep the power of money, of course, to themselves to a very large degree. We'll see about what happens on the sidelines of this, but big debates are already going on around the world on this. All of banking, insurance, loan, insurance, financing will be fully digitized. That's using artificial intelligence, robotic process automation. There will still be lots and lots of people in the loop here because the systems aren't ready to make big decisions by themselves. They're too complex, they're too human. That's going to be a powerful change. Basically, look at what happens in the media business, right? It's no longer cable television. Well, in some countries it is, right? But it's internet-based, IP-based television, and anything we want at any given time. Agriculture technology, food technology, that will basically bring sustainability to new heights. It will fix many healthcare problems. It will fix issues like the fact that obesity kills more people than hunger today, which is a crazy statistic, right? So we're going to work on both sides of the equation using technology to improve what people eat, how they eat, vertical farming, meat made in the lab, and so on. That is going to be absolutely mind-boggling in the opportunities. 9 billion people connected. That's twice as many as today, roughly, in 2030, with fast devices, low cost, and everywhere. I think you'll count on very few places in 2030 that will not be connected, and some of them maybe will be not connected by design to have sort of a comfort zone for us. I sometimes say luxury, the new luxury is to be offline. And that may well be the case then. And we'll have this deep convergence of digital, virtual, and the physical world. Some people call that phygital, but a combination of physical and digital. Complete convergence, and also with virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on. And that's going to be also hard to take because for humans, it's not good to always be connected. I mean, we have to contemplate, disconnect, do other things. right? And that's going to be quite a challenge to keep the balance between those two. And the end of coal, that is already here and palpable. I mean, it's basically, we can sense what's happening here now with COVID. We have a crisis there again with the energy crisis. But the end of coal and oil and then gas is coming, right? And it's not going to be a viable business anymore by 2030. And circular economy will be everything. If you're not circular in the sense of giving back to the environment and creating a unique system of an ecology, then you won't be there by 2030 as a company. And we're moving towards an energy abundance. And we're going to see lots and lots of sustainable renewable energy and, of course, possibly nuclear fusion, maybe not by 2030, but then energy becomes as abundant as air, which seems kind of abundant, but in a way we are paying for air as well, right? And finally, 3D printing, leaps in nanotechnologies that will be able to completely redo supply chain, do away with the current issues, change global shipping, and so on. So these are all of the things that are heading towards us. I think it's primarily opportunity, but understanding is the key point, right? Understanding means not just reading a research report, but emotional understanding and developing foresight and being critical and questioning things, right? Imagination is more important than knowledge, is what Einstein told us. Of course, he was Einstein. I do like the knowledge idea. I wish I could be like Einstein. I'm a little bit further removed from this, unfortunately, but imagination will be important for us to understand what goes on around us without having to use logic and say yes or no to everything, because we're not binary. We're multinary beings. So South America, and generally, of course, the southern part of the world, we're heading into a world where it's going to be 5 revolutions of industry. The first one, of course, the Industrial Revolution and the automation that happened in the Industry 3.0, and then a digital revolution in the 4.0, and now the 5.0, Industry 5.0 is connected systems, intelligent systems. And that's all coming together. In fact, now we're moving into a world that's no longer about industrialization. It's no longer just about information. It's about knowledge, experiences, and creativity. We're going away from atoms to bits. And that's really changing also the extraction economy that we use oil and gas and natural resources. Now we're moving into a new phase of a different economy, the experience economy, the creative economy, which I'll talk about in a second. But just some examples on this, for example, travel and airlines and planes and trains, moving towards datafication, cognification, as I mentioned in the mega shift, all that coming together to create entirely new possibilities, including, of course, all the trials that we have with flying taxis and different kinds of airplane fuels, mind-boggling possibilities here that are coming towards us, and what's happening with vertical farming. This will be such a big deal for South America and for the whole world, of course, being able to grow food in this is not a lab, it's more like like a skyscraper full of vertical farming. This is already happening. It's too expensive, but just wait for the prices to come down, where every large town can have a skyscraper full of fresh organic food run by robots. And then we have, of course, the fact that we can change the entire meat eating culture. You know, that's been 26% of CO2 comes from agriculture and livestock, and a large part of that is livestock. And now we have the possibility, for example, for Memphis Meats and other Impossible Burger and so on, that are essentially creating meat in the lab. Right? So this is basically cultured meat and, of course, meat substitute as well. That's going to be another very big example that will have great impact on the economy. Will we stop having cows or chicken or pork? Not anytime soon, but eventually we can feed everybody with this new kind of protein. And then financial services are turning the mega shifts into digital money. And that's going to happen in the very near future. We have lots of debates about this already. Disintermediation of banks, new services coming in, like we had with TransferWise, for example, for international money transfers, and the Facebook currency that's still under development and so on. And now, of course, Mark Zuckerberg wants to redo the name of Facebook. I think it's going to be called the Tyrell Corporation. No, now that was a different movie. But yeah, welcome to the metaverse. You know, the world where everything is digitally connected. I do hope that Facebook does not get to run the metaverse as such, and I'm suspicious as to the metaverse being actually good for humans. But hey, you know, this is all a digital world that we're moving into. We have to understand it. We have to put it all together. Money is becoming digital. Money will be something that becomes just as digital as music or media. And you can see the debates about digital currencies. And a great saying, a quote here from Randall Krosner, who says, the digital currency revolution could be either a triumph of decentralization, unlikely in my view, or a triumph of government monitoring. Let's hope it comes out somewhere in the middle. I think we're always going to have cash in some way or the other, but definitely digital money is the future, and it should be very beneficial for small and medium-sized companies. So let's talk about the sustainability revolution, the total decarbonization of the world that's coming up. Basically, we're going green all around. The pressure is on the Glasgow summit next week. I hope there's going to be really precise action here, but this is no longer something that is sort of an after-dinner conversation like CSR, right? It's existential, as we've seen with all the climate disasters and the weather anomalies that we've had already in the summer. This is a revolution, and it's basically the whole wheel of revolution that we see here: renewable energy generation, net zero pledges, the green deals that we see all over the world. You've got to get on this in a fast way, because that's where the new economy is going. A $5 trillion fossil fuel subsidies will stop, and hundreds of billions, if not trillions, will move to funding new energy through ESG and many other ways. ESG is a great thing, of course, that's happening all around us, creating new opportunities, but we have to be very careful about this kind of idea of greenwashing. Really what we should be doing is funding primary markets for renewable energy, not secondary markets only. And we should put the money quickly into those places that can guarantee us a healthy and sustainable future and an equitable future for everybody. This is going to be so crucial. This is a major pivot around the world. Decarbonization is a much larger task than digitization, but of course they go together, right? Technology allows us to decarbonize quickly, and really it's a mind-boggling development here. Green becomes the new digital. Don't just focus on digital, focus on green digital, renewable systems. I mean, what we're seeing around us here in ESG investing is already the beginning of a curve. This curve will go up x50, right, in the next decade. Not just ESG, but basically sustainable investing in every possible variation. And we're talking about real funding of real projects, not a sort of fig leaf project or greenwashing as it's been called. That has to be something that we really have to look at, also because the global pressure is on to fix this problem. 2030 net zero is a good goal. 2050 is way too late. If you want to have a good future, you want your kids to have a good future, we better step on it and increase what we're doing, because the climate tech and everything around this is here. Look at this chart here from exponential view, basically showing that all the red dots, that's all the stuff that's already here, and the yellow dots are the ones that are coming in 2 to 5 years. That's pretty much already here. And 5 to 10 years, the blue dots, basically we are here in climate innovation. And so it's pretty safe to say that we will have all of the tools of change, but will we have the telos, the wisdom? Will we make the right decisions? And that decision will be up to you, of course, funding enterprises and putting loan guarantees in place and understanding what should be developed and what should not, and what is still science fiction. For example, with the food agenda. Next on this one is really quite clearly food and agriculture is going to be the next big frontier in digital change, because that is roughly 26%. You can see it breaks down here to 31% of that being livestock, supply chain, and so on. And there's a great process of fixing this that is coming. Huge opportunity also to feed everybody. We're going to have to be much smarter than we have been so far. And that means we have to touch the holy cows. We have to think about what happens with meat. Are we going to stop eating meat? Well, I believe the future will be vegetarian in some way or the other. Not necessarily real vegetarian in the sense of not eating cells from meat. But as you can see here, cultured meat, novel vegan meat replacement. The growth is going to be absolutely amazing. And we're moving into a future where this kind of impossible idea has become the new normal. For example, in Brazil, you have I love this name of this product, right? The Futuro burger and the Frango Futuro, right? I mean, this is all basically meat that is not really meat, or it's made from cells, from basically cultured meat cells. So no longer unthinkable, but in a new normal. And we have to think about what that means for all of the pieces of your food chain, of the ecosystem that you currently are working in. So what used to be unthinkable is the new normal. We're going to see carbon taxes for flying. That's coming for sure, because the kind of binge flying and frivolous flying is over. And I used to do a lot of that, so it's going to really hit me hard. There's going to be a carbon tax on meat. And all that money that's raised in the carbon taxes will be put to good use by reinventing our entire food chain of energy and food. And you can be a big player and a big part of this as we're essentially moving to this paradigm of the new normals, and unthinkable is off the table. We're not going back to the normal that it was 5 years ago or pre-COVID. Great slide from the World Economic Forum. Here, roughly, this is super optimistic, right? $10 trillion of annual new business opportunities is what the World Economic Forum says, and 395 million new jobs by 2030 in the green economy of energy, extractives, and infrastructure, and food. Great opportunity. Let's see if those optimistic numbers pan out, but the Great Reset can be felt in here everywhere. I mean, I've been looking at this for quite some time, and I look around and I see all of the things that are already happening in food and automation and all the things that we have already invented, and the curve is exponential. So I totally believe, and by the way, I have tested and tried meat from the lab, right? And it tasted great. It was a bit expensive with $2,000 per pound, but the price has already gone down to 200 or something. This is the future. And we will have to get used to what that means and which part of it we like and which part of it we don't like. Huh? So let's talk about artificial intelligence, what that means to us, because that's very closely related to all the progress that we're making here. Let's get rid of the old-fashioned thinking that AI is everything from Hollywood and it's all this ex machina and transcendence and Black Mirror and everything else. Really, AI, simply defined, is turning information and data into knowledge. That's Demis Hassabis from DeepMind. So turning information into knowledge, that is kind of a scary idea, because in the end, aren't we the ones that are knowledgeable as humans? Well, that's a debate we should have later when we do the Q&A. But really the action right now is all here in machine learning and deep learning, which is basically defined as understanding patterns and getting insights without being programmed. That is the key point of artificial intelligence. Creating patterns, looking at responses, machine learning, deep learning, and making decisions by using data. Is that going to ignore a lot of data that we perceive as humans? Of course, and that's why we have to stay in the loop for the foreseeable future. I think the biggest problem with artificial intelligence is not that machines will take over because they have all the data and the learning, but that we start thinking too much like them, that we leave out the other data, that we become machines ourselves in the process of using them too many. Here's a great example of AI. It's a very simple a spreadsheet generator where you can type or speak using GPT-3, which is an open AI project. And basically here you can say, well, I don't have to learn Excel anymore. I can just speak or type and it'll make a spreadsheet. That's called intelligent assistance. That is a simple process of using intelligent machines to make it faster and more plausible for me to be quicker with my work. And you can see how that impacts jobs here. For example, banking and financial jobs will be declining because of the routine work being done by machines. But on the other hand, financial and insurance will have new jobs that are based on communications, right? And health and hospitality and all of the neighboring sectors. So there's kind of a switch on the job pyramid here, not really much of a displacement. That depends very much on the country, of course. But the bottom line really is, as you're moving into that future, is to say, well, machines really are for answers, for simple, well, not simple, but logical buildings, building blocks of societies. Humans are for questions. In terms of potential melanomas, then a machine like an AI, IBM Watson, would eventually know what it really looks like. And up here is the human-only turf, and that is basically going to be wisdom, understanding, quiet knowledge, deep knowledge. Understanding is not the same as knowledge, right? It's a much deeper thing. And human-only skills. And basically our only job in the future, when the machines get really clever, will be to do only human-only work, right? It's to be human. And that may ultimately lead to a point in 10, maybe 15 years to where we work a lot less because the machines are finally getting it. And we can work 3 or 4 hours a day for the same money and do a basic income. Well, I'm not going to talk about that. I will derail the whole conversation here. But the future of work is coming. and it makes us move up the pyramid, and this is a really big deal for education and for planning for what we should be doing as to what new generations will be doing. Clearly, in that overlap of humans and machines, that's increasingly coming. And we're not only just getting to live longer and longevity, we're also using technology much closer to us with virtual reality, augmented reality on your glasses very soon, and everything like this. Humans and machines are converging in some way. But despite of all of that progress, it's still going to be about trust and relationships, engagement, experience. That's what humans do. Right? Culture eats technology for breakfast. Think about that for a second when you're thinking about your loan guarantees and your customers and the approach to them and what decisions that you make. It's about cultural things. Right? Culture defines success. Successful companies have great culture. And that's why they're moving ahead. And this is really important to understand, because in the end, it's going to be about those two things. The human things, what I call the androrhythms, the human things like purpose and curiosity, critical thinking. That's what our kids have to learn. That's what makes them human. A machine will not have foresight and can't imagine the future. It will not have critical thinking as such. It will not have imagination. So our future is really this: awesome humans on top of amazing technology, or with amazing technology. And the ticket for us in terms of our careers and company success is to be an awesome human, to develop our human skills and our curiosity, our playfulness, our experimentation. And that is going to be even more crucial in the financial and banking sectors, because it used to be all about numbers, and now it's about understanding the context and making decisions with and on top of technology, but not under technology. To not have the machines make the decisions that they don't have enough information to really understand. A contextual understanding that we have, right? The understanding of real life. That brings me to digital ethics, the topic of how we use technology in a good way. I mean, we're moving into a future where it's not about this anymore. Digital transformation is everywhere. And we're working on that. Everybody's working on it. I'm sure you guys are working on that. That's happening pretty much across all domains. That also translates into societal transformation. As societies are changing and the setup of societies are changing, and also the distribution of the benefit of digital transformation, and ultimately human transformation. Our healthcare, our makeup, our genome, and all that is coming in the next 10 to 20 years. So the important thing is, and when we look at technology, we can get very excited, and technology drives our societies, but ethics defines our society. And this is how I define ethics, right? Knowing the difference between what you have the right or the power to do and what is the right thing to do. And this is so crucial to decide. And that's basically a decision that we have to make every day now. Is this the right thing to do with technology? Is this the right place to put my money? And this is what Facebook investors are asking now. Is this the right place to put my money? As Facebook is becoming sort of corrosive to society. So it may help to have this in your companies, in your organization, sort of an ethics council that looks at technology and says, is that a good thing to have? Is it possible? Yes. A lot of technology will be possible, like uploading your brain to the internet. Is it a good idea? No. And then we have to define it, and we have to think about what that means and how we make the right decisions. It's not about necessarily being criminal or having a justice system that tells you what is right or wrong. It's about being ethical and human. There's two different things that hang, of course, together in so many multiple ways. For example, if it's about making complex decisions about diversity and privacy and human autonomy, the machine will be useless there because it doesn't know why it's important. The human values are something that we feel, right? Algorithms know the value of everything, but the feeling of nothing. And we shouldn't let that run our policy, right? So we should embrace technology, but always keep the human in the loop. HITL, it's been called, right, in technology. So always make sure that a human is in charge and makes the final decision, even if it's slower, even if it's more expensive. Until we know that we can trust the machine, for example, Google Maps is one of those great examples, we can kind of trust it, but we question it. And ultimately, we're in the loop when we're driving, even if we're using Google Maps. So here's our reality. We're entering into sort of a renaissance of humans, right? Basically surrounded by technology. And that is just so true all around us. We've seen the effect of technology in positive ways and sometimes in suffocating ways. And we have to make sure that we are good at remaining human. And in this place, it's going to be about not just using technology. Everybody will have technology, every industry, every sector, every bank, every organization. Right? It is your humanity that will differentiate you, not the technology. Right now, not having technology is kind of a death wish. Right? And now we're getting technology and we're transforming. But in the end, it's going to be about your humanity, the things that make you human, that will be your key asset. Right? Not the things that you have on your server or in the cloud. Right? All of those things. Right? Do you have creativity, imagination, ethics, values, compassion? Right? That is going to be the crucial part. That's how we run technology companies. That's how we run business organizations and government organizations and countries, right? Based on the two things together. So let me wrap up by saying, how do we get to be future ready and why is it important? Well, here's the thing, we're going down this digital tunnel, navigating all the game changes I talked about earlier, and we think they're happening pretty fast, but the reality is we only at the very first thing. You ain't seen nothing yet, as the song goes, and we are speeding up like crazy, and it's going to be so fast the whole thing will be a blur. So very important to remember that we are leaping into the future. Linear thinking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, will not cut it. Right? We have to live linear because we are linear. We are organic people, right? We are humans. But what we have to do is we have to think exponential. We have to think and understand leaping. 4, 8, 16, 32, that's what technology does. And we have to anticipate the speed and not say, well, next year it'll be twice as many or 4 times as many, but it's not linear. It could leap and basically go from a pivot point to being the new normal, like WhatsApp or Spotify or Netflix or Hulu or whatever you're doing now, as opposed to watching regular television. Right? And so we have to become comfortable with the game changes. And here they are again: data everything, networked everything, cloud everything, smart everything. And this is the big one, right? Sustainable everything. And that is going to be the combination of opportunities, trillion-dollar opportunities. I think McKinsey says roughly $15 trillion worth of value change from the fossil fuel economy to the green economy. Get comfortable with this and get comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable in that process. This is what's happening, right? It's a quickly moving, constantly changing environment where we have to develop the future mindset to understand what is coming next. We have to drop this idea of being so efficient all the time and having answers for everything. It's not about efficiency. Efficiency was good when there was lots to be made efficient, but at a certain point efficiency has been achieved, and it's not the purpose of life. Efficiency is just the beginning of things. Now, because of COVID also, it's about courage and agility and resilience. It's about inventing things from scratch. And this is what you should be funding when you're thinking about your development of agricultural products or services, platforms, and so on, is to develop things that can be agile and push things forward and reward imagination and so on, and to take a holistic approach. Holistic means it's good for the investor, it's good for the people, it's good for the planet, it's good for maybe the stock market even, right? And it's good for humanity at large. And ticking all those boxes: people, planet, purpose, and prosperity. That is the future where we are moving when it's about deciding what we want. Right? So to get this right in this complex environment that is basically like a never-ending wall of innovation, we have to make the future a priority. That means you have to spend some time in the future every day. I say an hour a day creates the future. And that is mostly reading. Not reading the web, even though that's a good start as well, or watching science fiction, but reading books. There's a great book list on my website, futurewithgert.com. I would start with a great book by Kim Stanley Robinson, KSR, Kim Stanley Robinson, called Ministry for the Future, that describes the next 10 years, looking back from 2032. It's written very, very entertainingly and has really the bottom line of what we're experiencing. But I bring back the ears here because this is what we have to grow. Right? If we want to make the future a priority, we have to grow the ears, the understanding of where that's going, and to make room for this. Right? So Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, brilliant company, brilliant CEO, says you need to get to the future ahead of your customers and be ready to greet them when they arrive. That should be the mission for your organization, because you're making big decisions about the future. every day, and it's getting more complex all the time. So get ahead of the customer and go to the future ahead of them to greet them when they arrive. I want to thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I know that's been a lot of material here. And we're going to dive into a conversation for a Q&A session. And please give me the hard question. And thanks very much. Muito obrigado. And I really appreciate your staying around. And now let's go into the test. Thank you. Hola, buenas. Bom dia.
Gerd, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We have lots of questions. In order for us to continue and not lose any time, I'm going to ask you the first one. Okay?
Yep.
Will our families and our family life will be transformed in any way by the technological changes, and how?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, technology has already completely transformed us just by using the mobile phone, right? And having the internet. I mean, it's interesting when you go to some countries that were kind of not so connected, like say, I often go to Brazil, so I go to Bahia somewhere, and all of a sudden people there have the internet and they can watch YouTube, right? It changes our culture. And it changes the way that we can work. It changes everything. And I think 90% of those changes are good, but we shouldn't overdo it in the sense of dropping everything else just because we have the internet. You know, I think that's going to be really important to keep a good balance. And I think family life will change, and I'm quite optimistic about economic circumstances. I think when we are connected, generally we can be more successful, finding more information, sharing information, talking to others, getting more leads. So I'm quite positive on this. What really needs to be sort of guarded and protected is our culture and what we do as people. You know, that has nothing to do with technology. So as I like to say, the more we connect, the more we have to protect what makes us human. And that will take a little bit of balancing.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We have another one here. How can development bank cope with innovation and technology and assure accessibility to financial services for all, mainly the vulnerable groups?
Yeah, I mean, first I think that dealing with the overwhelming things that are happening, all of the future trends and everything around us, you know, the best thing to do is to dedicate some time to this. I think everybody needs to dedicate, like I said before, 45 to 60 minutes per day of being aware and learning about the future. That should be part of our job. It shouldn't be extra, you know, because when we do that, we develop this kind of understanding, right? And that's how we get ready. The second thing is that we should collaborate with startups and small companies and entrepreneurs to bring innovation into the company, into the bank, into the organization, because that's what they do all day long. So the big successful companies, they all are partnering with hundreds of startups. And there's lots of really amazing companies in Latin America, in Ibero-America, and of course in Spain and Portugal as well, doing new products. So we don't have to invent everything ourselves, right? And thirdly, the development of funding. I think there's going to be a lot of alternatives for funding on a private level, starting with Kiva and those kind of small things. You know, funding a project for 20 million, I think that's going to be for quite some time in the hands of larger banks and organizations. But it's becoming more democratic there. And I think it's really important to understand what that means, to be transparent, to be on top of it, and to be ahead of in the future before the client gets there, like I said earlier.
Okay, great, Gerd. Thank you very much. We have another question here. Will advertising control our decisions in the future?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, in many countries, the television has been dominating advertising for a long time. So people watch television all day long and they see a commercial 57 times. And now the same thing is happening on the internet. And the bad part of that is that there's all the tracking and the surveillance. Like you go from one website to the other and the cookies are exchanged. And all of that is going to completely change. So what's going to happen, I think it's already quite clear, that in many cases we'll pay a little bit something to stay more private. So basically paying for privacy seems to be a major trend. Advertising will, of course, advertising is human, right? Marketing is a human activity, really. That will continue, but I think overbearing advertising and surveillance and abusive data behavior like we have from Facebook and social media, that is dehumanizing us. It's a big problem. So I think a lot of governments and companies themselves will seek to be more open about this and more protective of the customer. In the end, we have to remember one thing, that every human enjoys a little piece of privacy and mystery. And it's not like we're just going to be open and transparent all the time, right? It's really important that we maintain this. It's a part of our civil rights. And advertising sometimes has shown to infringe this. But right now there's a reset in advertising on the internet. So give it 2 or 3 years, and I think we're probably going to end up paying a little bit more to be more private and taking companies like Google and Facebook much more into account and in accountability.
Okay, Gerd. Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time with you. Hopefully, we'll be able to see you soon. I'm sure everybody enjoyed your talk, and
Thank you.
thank you very much.
It's been my great pleasure. See you in the future. Live long and prosper.
Thank you very much. Jorge, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.